Hey, learning nerds. Before we begin today's show, I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this podcast, Idle Courses Academy. If you're looking to transition over into the corporate instructional design space, you need the right guidance to do so. And Dr. Sargent and her team have done an incredible job of focusing on what's important to be a corporate instructional designer, like storyboarding, ID models and theories, authoring tools, project management tactics, and more. They even cover how to make your resume and portfolio stand out from the crowd and have an impressive completion rate with their students working at organizations like Google, Salesforce, GM, Uber, Walmart, and Amazon. Also, you won't be going through the learning experience alone. You'll be studying alongside other aspiring instructional designers, as well as working with experienced coaches. And as an added bonus, you'll get a copy of my book at a discount, What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer. So check out the industry-recognized program that's showing up in job descriptions as preferred training and education by going to idlecourses.com/academy. Enrollment is officially open again, so be sure to use my discount code Luke to save you $88 off your enrollment. And now, let's start the show. Hello, learning nerds, and welcome on into the nerdiest podcast you're going to hear today. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I am your certified learning nerd. I am your guide throughout your own instructional design journey, and of course, the host of this show. By day, I am a senior instructional designer and program manager over at MIT X-Pro. By night, I am also an instructor, the founder of Instructional Design Institute, and I make a lot of content on the internet to share with you more about my experiences within instructional design because, folks, my passion, my purpose is to help you along your instructional design journey. Whether you're a newbie or you're a veteran in the field, all are welcome on into this show. And of course, you can find out more about anything I just mentioned over at drlukehobson.com. We have an interesting and special show for you today. It is another Q&A episode. I know how much many of you love these different types of shows, so I'm going to get into that in a little bit. Before I do, though, I wanted to remind you once again that enrollment for Instructional Design Institute is still available right now. The next cohort is going to be launching on May 1st, so be sure to get your applications in by then. If you don't know what Instructional Design Institute is, by the way, this is an instructional design boot camp. It is a 7-week-long boot camp to really teach you all about the fundamentals of instructional design and designing learning experiences from a higher education perspective. We are going to be going through everything as far as with andragogy, backward design, UDL, evaluating the effectiveness of your learning experiences, and of course, the research that goes in for the behind the scenes about how everything actually does come to be with being able to identify the need in the learners and the overall purpose of your learning experience and all of that good stuff. So it's a 7-week-long boot camp covering all of those topics. And of course, you are indeed going to be building and designing your own learning experience. I want to make sure you do have a hands-on experience of being able to do that. And of course, that'll be going into your portfolio, which we're obviously going to be talking about as well. Basically, I will be your instructor throughout this entire 7-week journey. I will be giving you personalized feedback on all of the major assignments. I'm going to be hosting weekly workshops. Of course, they're going to be recorded because they always should be, and they'll be launching over on the next day. And also, this is going to be a cohort-based model. You should not be going through your instructional design journey alone. You should be going through with this with peers and with colleagues, and anyone from any amount of experience is welcomed on in to apply for ADDIE. So if any of that sounds exciting to you, maybe you can head on down over into the show notes to find the link for Instructional Design Institute. And of course, you can just Google Instructional Design Institute. It will pop up. Fill out the application so that way I can make sure it is a right fit for you, for your goals, for your expectations, what it is you want to be able to learn about. And of course, you will be hearing from me afterwards via email about next steps. So hey, can't wait to work with you. Can't wait to nerd out with you. All right, folks. So for today's show Q&A episode, we do have 5 questions. They are some fantastic questions. You can, of course, go inside of this video to see the different timestamps for the different questions. Find the one that speaks to you, and you can head on over and see that by just going down below at the bottom. But other than that, I don't want to waste any time because actually I introduce our special guest in a different kind of way, different style of introduction. Let's see if you like it because he's already been on the show so far. So I didn't want him to introduce himself a second time. So I did it this time. And of course, I've had fun with it because I find this show a lot of fun and being able to nerd out with you. So anyway, I'm not going to waste any time. Let's start the show. Folks, welcome on in to another Q&A episode. I cannot wait to dive on into this one because once again, I have a special guest who is going to be helping me to answer your questions, and hopefully together we can put our minds together to be able to give you the very best answers. So allow me to introduce our guest today on this episode. He is the instructional designer and program manager over at EduFlow. You have easily seen him on LinkedIn talking about EduFlow Academy, and of course, everything is done for the community within our Slack channel as well. He is the one and the only, my brother from another mother, the one and only William Cronje. William, welcome back onto the show.
Thanks so much for that amazingly enthusiastic introduction.
I had to do this as a Friday, as I was just telling you 10 seconds ago. I'm on my second cup of coffee. I am working my way. It is going to be one of those shows because I did not go to bed last night. So I am very excited, William, to dive on into these questions. And I don't know about you, but I was shocked to see how many questions we actually got.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be like almost a 3-part episode at some point.
It's a good problem. It's a really good problem to have because we asked for questions from the audience on LinkedIn, Facebook, email, and all that good stuff, and just expecting to try to be able to get at least a couple. And in turn, we ended up with 15, 16 around there if I tally everything up. So definitely, this is not going to be a one type of episode. There's way too much to be able to go through for this one. But also, and I'm not going to say the name of this person, but you had a fantastic idea to be able to invite on another guest, and definitely they are awesome. So I cannot wait to be able to bring them on for the episode part 2 to go into this with us. And maybe this will become a theme because I did not realize until you told me to look into this more that Riverside can have up to 7 guests. So
yeah,
we can do it. We can have a lot of friends on and talk more about this and nerd out with us. So this is going to be interesting. It's going to be cool to be able to see where this can go. And of course, being able to help out the fine folks out there of answering their questions. So William, we have 5 questions to be able to talk about. I know we worked on these beforehand to be able to scribe down some notes and go through them. All very interesting. Different types of questions. And once again, for the folks who are watching and listening at home, you can find the timestamps. You can, of course, go down below, see all the different things as far as for the show notes, and figure out what question you want to be able to dive on into. But William, are you ready to do this?
Yeah, let's go. I was just going to suggest that maybe we can encourage people to guess who the mysterious guest will be for the next episode.
Like that. I like that.
Fun thing.
Tag us on LinkedIn. Who do you think is coming on the podcast for the next episode? Who will it be? Yeah, we can just do it every week. It's like surprise mystery guest. Just keep inviting random people to come on. It's just like, oh yeah. We can just keep on bringing on the folks. So no, awesome. Love a suggestion. Are you ready to do this? Ready to dive into question number 1? All right, let's do this. So this one is short and simple, and it says, what type of jobs and common project tasks match up to each part of the ADDIE process? Is it possible that one person would have to do it all for a job? William, do you want to tackle this one first, or do you want me to tackle this one?
Maybe I'll start off if that's okay.
Go right ahead, of course.
So, based on all the people I've spoken with and all the different industries, I can confirm that instructional design is a very, very broad field, and there are so many different niches and specializations and stuff. And I've often heard of like a mysterious instructional design person who is able to do all of these things. And they're often referred to as a unicorn because they're quite hard to find. But I'm kind of curious about what you think, if you agree with that.
Yes. So definitely the magical unicorns, while they do exist, it is certainly hard to find. But the one thing I kind of want to take a step back from, because maybe not everyone knows about the ADDIE model. So being able to explain about that a little bit more. So if you do not know what this stands for, ADDIE stands for Analyze, Design, Deliver, Implement, and Develop. Analyze, Design, Develop, Implement, and Evaluate. And what this really means, if you think about it from a common sense perspective, it does make sense that you are first starting with being able to conduct the research to figure out exactly, is this really a problem that's going to be worth solving? What is the purpose of it? What is the overarching end goal? Does it actually make sense to be able to do this? And then you walk through a series of steps to be able to figure out how to design the product, how to be able to build it, to put it together, to launch it, to collect feedback, make sure everyone is trained properly, so on and so forth. There could be literally an entire podcast episode talking about ADDIE if we really wish to be able to do so. But the thing that I want to be able to clear up, though, and I believe you have the same perspective as well too, William, is that it's not this type of linear process that you complete everything with analysis first, and then you move into the next step, and then you complete everything. It's like that's not how it works within the real world. It really much so is that you do one thing, you evaluate how that's going, you get feedback, and then you try to be able to then move to the next step, the next, and the next. And it's an ever-evolving, changing type of process. It's not that you're locked in for sure into one thing and you can't move on to the next. Is that how you feel about this as well?
Yeah, and I think maybe it's this interpretation of the ADDIE process that gives it so much flack. People think that it's a linear process, so they say, okay, well, let's rather use Agile or something else as a project management framework. But from my experience, the ADDIE process, I mean, there isn't even like a seminal ADDIE process. Like every single ADDIE process is an adaptation of what people think ADDIE is, So I've gone to like organizations and I've chatted with people, and they'll each describe their own like processes and sub-processes within each of the phases of ADDIE to meet the conditions or the circumstances that they have. So yeah, 100%. Like I definitely agree with you there.
Exactly, because that's also too when things can get really tricky. So, for instance, let's say, William, that you and I, we both talk about ChatGPT a lot. Let's say that we're creating a course about ChatGPT, and it's going to be out there to essentially train educators, and we're going to be educating them about how to actually use ChatGPT for the classroom. Let's say that we do everything as far as with the analysis, and we're going through, we're conducting all this research, we're finding out all of this information, and then we start moving on into the design phase. Well, then all of a sudden, let's say that ChatGPT releases a brand new version. There's a huge update or something along those lines. That doesn't mean that we're just going to ignore that. Or we're just going to be like, oh, that's too bad. Let's keep on going. It's like, no, we got to stop and pause and think here. What do we need to do to bring in this new information? Is this still even a viable product?
Yeah.
Complete. Like, are we scrapping this entirely? Which is totally possible, especially with this ever-changing landscape of technology that nothing is going to be evergreen anymore, and talking about specifically within tech, which is so hard to be able to do as I'm trying to make different types of offerings right now within the tech space. And it's like, yeah, you really got to figure out what is the purpose behind the product. Why exactly should someone be taking this? What are the goals of everything you're trying to be able to achieve as far as for a unit, an organization, like a business goal, essentially, about does it actually make sense to be able to do? So with all of that in mind, you're constantly revising and evaluating and going back into the process. But I did want to, though, speak to this person's point when they're asking about this question of like, so if you're not the magical unicorn, let's say, is there actually a job out there where people do, let's say, hire for one stage compared to another? And I can tell you for a fact that that is true. It is a bit unusual, but I have worked at a university before where essentially they had if you took like the beginning of the A and the D stage, that's what their designers did. But then when it came to actually develop and put it into the learning management system that they used at the time, they handed it over to a developer who then built everything, and then that was then handed off into the next line of people, which is going to be the team leads, who essentially would be training the trainer, training the instructors to know how to actually then teach and to facilitate this content. Then it went into a course evaluation team, which would be the E. So there were indeed jobs that lined up to each stage. Yeah. It's not always a common thing, but I have seen it done, so it's possible. But it's
I've even been in an office where the entire instructional design unit was the desks were structured according to the ADDIE process,
Oh, yeah.
which is pretty cool. So they had the people who did the investigation and the analysis and design phase. They were by the door, and then the developers were kind of in the back, and the LMS administrators and the people who did all the technical stuff in the kind of implementation phase, people were in the back, which kind of I felt sorry for the people in the back because the front of the office had a nicer view, but
I was just gonna say with a lights dimmer, because that's what always where developers sit. They're always just put me in the dark.
Yes,
just let me do my work. Yeah, exactly. Hunched over, leave me alone. Just let me do my thing. So that's usually how. That's what I've always seen in every office I have ever worked at. That's been the trend. So that makes sense to me. I guess
you can also add that it probably depends on the organization size.
Yes.
So if an organization consists of 15 people, there'll probably be one instructional designer, if there even is an instructional designer. So let's say it's a really small organization, you'll probably have a jack of all trades. You'll get a person who is loosely responsible for all of these things. At least that's from my perspective what'll happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Because my team right now is a team of we just hired another person, so now we're a team of 6 of us. But I still do everything. I do every single part of this entire super fun journey. And yes, I do coordinate with the marketing team, the engineering team, the customer support team, but I am still somewhat present in every single step and involved within everything. So, and because my team is small, that's why, talking to your point, because what I was giving with that example from that past university, they were huge. So it was, it's just all right, if you have a team of 30 instructional designers, then obviously that's really different.
Yeah,
so,
definitely. Yeah. And I mean, in a small team, you probably have people who have strengths, so you'll get someone who's really good at the maybe development side. So you'll probably try to leverage those strengths, and maybe someone else prefers talking to stakeholders and the project management type stuff as well. I mean, it really depends on I think what people like doing and how that process is built in that specific context.
Absolutely. And if you want to hear an example about more from ADDIE, at least from the corporate perspective, when I interviewed Shreya Gupta before, she is the learning experience designer over at Amazon. She actually walks us through inside of that entire episode about how she uses ADDIE in the real world, which was extremely insightful to hear about. Yes, it's her and it's her division, and it doesn't speak for all of Amazon, but it was really interesting to hear about how she actually does it and how she works with engineers and how she kind of goes with all the different types of things. So if you want to hear more about an example from a corporate perspective, you can definitely listen to that one as well. And then the other one that obviously we have to be able to plug in and mention because we're both a part of is that if you want to go into instructional design principles for course creators over at EduFlow Academy, we do talk about ADDIE. Definitely you would be exploring and experiencing that at least for the first 3, for the A, the D, and the D. You're definitely going to be hitting home for that one. We do cover the I and the E, but not as extensively. But definitely folks should be able to do that as well. If you want to speak any more to that, please feel free, because I know you're the main voice behind that. I'm just one of them.
I think the enrollment is going to close soon. So if you're listening to this podcast, you should probably go over to eduflow.com/academy. And then I think the instructional design principles course will be on the first clickable button, and then you can quickly go book your seat before time runs out.
Absolutely. A free cohort about the learning nerd world. What's not to love? So be sure to do that. We'll see you there. Of course, if you apply and you're accepted, fantastic. Can't wait to work with you. But William, I think we covered that one. Are we?
Yeah.
We good there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I can add one more thing.
Yes, go for it.
So there's this really cool tool by the Association for Talent Development, ATD, and they've got this capability model that it kind of tracks all of the different skills and things that people do in the talent space, and they even have a little self-assessment. So if you want to see how your skills stack up or how your abilities stack up, against key competencies in this field, that self-assessment might be a really nice place to start. You might figure out where you're really good, and you might figure out where you need to maybe work on some things. And then, they even in the self-assessment, they can even recommend ATD courses that could help you plug those gaps.
Interesting. Cool. Well, that'll be in the show notes because I'm going to figure that out and grab that link from you after the show. So go down below in the show notes and you can find all the things that we have been talking about so far. All right. Question 2.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, it says, hello. First, I want to thank you both because you were 2 significant influences on my path to becoming an instructional designer. I'm currently working as an intern junior ID. I have been following Luke and William for some time now, following advice and content, and that has been fundamental for my trajectory. I've done EduFlow's ID principles, and right now I'm at the Designing Social Learning Experiences Cohort 5. I just want to take the opportunity of having you together to properly thank you for all of your great work, content, and attitude. And I was wondering if you have any advice for when the internship is over and I go back out there looking for opportunities. Again, can't thank you enough. Well, first and foremost, thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's like the first thing I was going to say as well. As like, thank you so much for that praise, and thank you so much for investing your time in EduFlow Academy and sharing kind of those journeys with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic to hear. And we know this person too, and they're a wonderful human being. So thank you once again for nerding out with us and being around with us for all of this time. Well, you took the first one. So do you want me to take this one?
Yes,
Let's keep going back and forth. Okay. So once again, so glad we've been able to help you out. And hopefully our next words of wisdom here will be able to help you all out along your way. So first thing is first, right now, you've already done a humongous obstacle, which is securing an internship. There's so many people right now that are like, how do I actually do this? How do I get an internship? So the fact that you're a junior ID, this is already like a huge hard part is already done. So what I would advise for you to be able to do is to completely take advantage of everything that you have right now at your disposal. So I would connect with everyone within your organization right now before you actually go and leave the organization, because then it's a lot harder to go and to connect with these other people again. So go connect with them, be able to talk more about and listen to their wants, their needs, where they think things are going, because of course, any and all different types of opportunities that perhaps you can express your interest in working with them again in the future. Once this is going to be done and you're moving on to your next thing, just plant that seed right now and be able to build those relationships in real time. Because what I've really found is that you never know. You have no idea when your next opportunity is going to come about. And usually it's just one conversation with one person, and then that connects for you from leading with a friend or to another colleague. And then before you know it, you're going into another interview for a whole new different type of instructional design job. It is entirely possible really to be able to do. So I would at least kind of just like digest the fact that you've done a lot of the hard part first. And now we can go into this next type of step with that one. And when I do say connect with people, I do mean not just having like the coffee chats. And I don't know if this is in person or virtual. They didn't say. Of course, you can do this in a variety of ways, but make sure that you do get their contact information, emails, phone numbers, LinkedIn profiles, whatever way that is comfortable for them. Make sure that you are getting this, and then that you are following up with them later on. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, nothing is going to happen. You do all the things I just said. Nothing really is popping out for an area of opportunity. Okay, no problem. Well, then a month from now, reach out to all those same people again, just saying, thank you so much. It was a pleasure working with you. I really hope in the future that once again, we can actually do another different type of opportunity. Looking forward to hearing from you if there is something. Thank you so much, kind of a thing. So you're constantly trying to be able to dig the well before you're thirsty, which is a kind of type of a common phrase within this type of
I like that expression.
Right? Because when you're actually thirsty and you're like, oh my God, I need water. And everyone's just like, nah, I'm not going to help you. I don't know who you are, kind of a thing. Whereas when people actually do know who you are, they are far more willing to go above and beyond for you because you have that relationship and that connection already in place. So that by far is absolutely huge. Also, after all that is said and done, I would write down everything that you've done so far, every accomplishment, every skill, every training, anything that you've done for the organization. Put all of that down and think about that, because that is then going to become your notes as far as reviewing them before your next opportunity, before your next interview, so that way you have that in place. And of course, if you can add that into your portfolio, your LinkedIn profile, if you can put in any of those things as well, and making sure that is going to be highlighted front and center about all the instructional design skills you just learned about, that is then going to be transferable to the next instructional design job. So once again, my friend, you've already done a ton of the hard work. Now it's just kind of putting it together and following through with things. That's my advice. William, what do you think about that?
I don't think I can top that. But I can add that maybe even going back to the previous question, take some time to think about what you really enjoyed doing. If you really enjoyed like the analysis and design stuff, maybe you want to specialize in that, and then start looking for jobs where you can focus and do stuff you love. I think the nice thing about an internship is often you have an opportunity to play around in a bunch of different kind of areas of an organization or areas in the team, and they often have sub-specializations or like mini specializations. And if you enjoyed a very specific thing, you might want to expand that and pursue that a bit more seriously. The other thing, I'm probably going to repeat what you said already, but think about where you provided value and how you can keep track of that, so that you can add that to your resume. And then the other like little trick might be to ask your colleagues or the people who maybe were your managers during the internship to write your little testimonial about the experience in the job, and then also ask them how they are keeping in touch with the industry. So especially if you're in a region, you might find that there are like regional communities or associations. So the ADDIE has chapters in specific areas, for example. So maybe they can introduce you to a chapter or introduce you to a Facebook group in your area that you might not have found otherwise. So kind of like really, again, as Luke said, like dig that well before you're thirsty, and try to use those last few months/weeks that you have left in your internship to really get yourself ready for the next step.
And I like that you said too about basically like letters of recommendation, references, because of course, once again, you can take all of that, you can put that into your LinkedIn profile. You can have that for when you apply to next jobs, so that way too, when you do apply and someone does say, who can we contact to learn more about your ID chops? You can then say, hey, this person. The other thing, William, which you just reminded me of too, is that if you did find that one area of an instructional design was really interesting to you, and let's say that there's one person within the organization where that's like, that is their heart and their joy, that's like they always do that one thing, well, then interview that person and ask them about advice and next steps. What would you do if you were me? If you just finished a 6-month internship and you're thinking about the next opportunity, and I loved being able to do building inside of a learning management system. That to me was like super thrilling. I loved it. It was, it really gave me a sense of joy and a sense of purpose here. So if I want to go down the same path as you, what advice would you say for me to be able to go and to take those next steps? Does not hurt to ask for advice from anything. And I would do that, and I have done that too with everybody. Even if it wasn't the most interesting thing in the world to me, I still was just like, I want to keep my options open, and I want to know, how did you get to where you are today? Because sometimes you'll get just, even if all of the advice, let's say that only like 10% of it was actually super helpful for you, that's still 10%. And every time you have another conversation, you add in more of that percentage into overall. And finally, you're going to have all these amazing talking points to say, all right, I got it. I should follow through with this and this and this, and I should buy this book. And as William was saying, I should go and connect with this community, this chapter. I should go and network with so-and-so on LinkedIn, whatever it is. And all of those things, once you stack them all together, you'll be in a really, really good place. Overall, I think our friend here is actually in a great spot. They just need to do the next step. But you're not, I would not consider an internship ending to be by any means like oh my God, end all be all moment. I think you're in a great spot. You just gotta go through with the next step.
Yeah. I think getting your foot in the door is probably one of the hardest parts, especially if you're transitioning. So kudos for
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, say hats off to this person, because their hard work shows. You've taken every course that we've basically offered. You're going to all these different events and workshops. Like, you're doing all the right things, if that makes you feel any better along your instructional design journey. So let's keep on going. I really think that you're going to be getting an instructional design job, honestly, not that far from now. So that'd be my next thing. All right. Next question.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, let's do this. This one is going to be for you, by the way, Mr. AI. So here we go. Number 3, AI is here to stay. It is going to probably change everything, and the learning space is no exception. So I was wondering, what skills you think are more relevant for an ID to have regarding AI and its use in the learning space? William, what do you think?
Are we going to have a time limit on this question? Because I think I could go on.
This would be a long one. Yeah.
So, yeah, I 100% agree with that statement. And someone tweeted somewhere about, AI isn't going to replace us. People using AI are going to replace us. So we have to learn how to adapt these tools and technologies as well as we can, and we have to explore the limitations. We have to be curious, and we have to try to be creative. I think probably one of the best skills you can have is the skill set of a really good people manager. So if you ever had a boss who was really good at giving you feedback and guidance and advice, and if they could write a really good brief that just gave you the right amount of information that you needed to do your job efficiently, that skill set, I think, is going to be exceptionally important, because when I'm thinking especially here when we're talking about ChatGPT or any of the language models that we'll be interacting with, if you are able to clearly articulate what you want, then you're going to have a massive head start. And if you can do it efficiently, and if you can get that result of what it gave you and iterate and figure out how to make it actually do what you wanted and not what you said, is going to be a really important thing. The other thing that I think is going to be really important, and I've been seeing it a lot, or I've been seeing like bad examples of this happening a lot, and that people are kind of ignoring the processes that we've crafted in the industry for forever now, right? So we shouldn't neglect the ADDIE process. We should augment the ADDIE process with ChatGPT. It's not going to mean that we don't have to do certain things. It just means we can do the things we used to do much faster, which means we can produce high quality content quicker than we maybe used to be able to do before. So what I'm very worried about is people saying, okay, well, I need to make a course, or let's say there's a training problem, so I'm going to make a course, without actually doing an analysis and figuring out if there actually needs to be a course. And if you build a course, make sure that you use your learning objectives to make sure that what you build is actually aligned with a goal. So, for example, if you create a quiz, let's say you dump a bunch of content into ChatGPT and say, create 4 quiz questions for me. It'll create quiz questions, but that content could maybe have like information about the history of something, which is often completely pointless. There's no reason to include the history of something unless maybe it's a history course or something. That's one of my pet peeves. But if you give it a learning objective and then do your content dump and then say, write me 4 quiz questions based on this learning objective, you're going to get way better quiz questions. So these type of prompt engineering skills are going to be very, very important for us in the future. And then maybe my final point will be that we have to be very careful and cautious about how we use it. I think it's going to be easy to be reckless and start trusting it too much. But if we are, say, trusting ChatGPT with developing a compliance course, we shouldn't expect ChatGPT to be our subject matter expert. It's going to be misleading. So we have to treat everything it does with scrutiny. And I like to say, you give what you get what you give. So make sure you give reliable information, and maybe ask it to recontextualize that information or something like that. So that's going to be important. The other thing is, there are still a few court cases that might completely undermine your image library if you rely on images too much, right? So if I know Shutterstock is suing I think, is it Midjourney? So it's they not Shutterstock. It is, yeah, one of the image libraries are suing the one of the image generation AI tools.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's a risk that if you have used like extensively used this image AI tool to generate your images for your course, and that court case rules in favor of the stock image company, you might have to go back to all of the images you added, and you might have to go and take them out, replace them, or maybe you even have to go and pay the original AI, not AI, you might have to pay the original authors of the image. So my recommendation is proceed with caution, especially now when we are in this installation phase, where we're still like figuring it out, and we are, constantly going to be stepping on turds as we learn how to use these tools.
Yeah, that is interesting. So also, I'm literally Googling this in real time because I didn't know about this. It's Getty Images.
Yes, that's it.
To make sure that we don't.
And
if
you look often in the news article for Getty Images or for this lawsuit, they have like this image that is generated by, I think it was OpenAI. No, not Open. It's generated by someone, and it literally has like a Getty image watermark at the bottom right-hand corner, because so many Getty images were used in the training data. So that's my my recommendation. Be very, very careful.
Fascinating. Yeah, because right now, so this is really interesting, is that Getty claims that Stability AI unlawfully scrapped millions of images from its site. The full suit is not public, and Stability AI said that it has yet received it. On the other hand, just a few days ago, Shutterstock announced it was expanding its relationship with Meta to use its data sets to develop, train, and evaluate its machine learning capabilities. So
that's a good partnership.
So that's cool. Shutterstock seems to be, yes, let's go for AI, and Getty is like, no, how dare you? So that's fascinating. I didn't know that. I will link to the show notes if you want to read more about that, as I will be doing after this podcast episode. So that's super interesting, and definitely, to your point, William, lawsuits and or having things shut down because Italy banned ChatGPT outright. It was like, no, you're not doing this because of data privacy. Also, too, just for the love of all that is holy, don't update your private information in a ChatGPT.
Yes.
Like, I don't know. I keep reading things of businesses being like, whoops, we put all of our financial data inside of here and now it's public. And it's like, wait, why? What do you, I mean, there was no good that was going to come out of that. So that's interesting.
Especially if it's, so you could be violating GDPR or
absolutely.
South Africa. There could be all kinds of, I think there's the California Data Protection Regulation or something like that. So all of these regulations, if you plug confidential client information into this tool, you could be violating the law.
For sure.
Which could get you in trouble.
For sure. And I can already picture it too, where let's say an instructor unknowingly takes all of like the student names from the classroom and like puts them in there, and it's just like, here's the submissions too, and it's just like, all right, well, every FERPA law is going up there being like, what are you doing? Like, so definitely please be safe with what you use with AI in the future. And we didn't share notes before this call talking about what actually we were going to say to each question. But like you, William, I said prompt engineering by far is the biggest thing. There are some job postings that are actually now up that you can see as far as there being an AI prompt engineer. That is now like a legitimate job. I only foresee that growing in the future, especially too for folks who are in this content creator space. That is going to be huge, because the more content you can create, the more effectively, then that's going to literally become a business model to be able to do that at a rapid rate. So I only foresee that coming into picture with everything so far. And there was one other thing that you mentioned too that made me think about trying to be able to think, which is going to be, how do you talk about AI? And that's kind of an interesting point, but it's more about if you're working within your organization and you're working with different stakeholders or whatnot, and you're going to definitely find that some people are either going to love it, to hate it, or or they're kind of in the middle, where like they're optimistic, but they don't really understand it. And you can definitely take this from my own personal experiences that now I've been talking more about AI online, and by far, some of the comments are like, this is awesome, this is fantastic. Other people are like, you're an idiot, what are you doing? Don't do that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's like, all right. So some people have some love-hate relationship about ChatGPT and about AI and everything else in the future. And there's only going to be more tools that are going to keep on coming out. I can't keep up anymore. I wait for either you to ping me, William, about one thing you like, or someone else tags me on something and saying you should check this out. And that's the only way I can keep up nowadays. But overall, I think the prompt engineering is going to stay. Obviously, be very careful once again with the whole privacy stuff, and then making sure that you are able to actually talk about this and articulate what you're trying to be able to convey with AI in the right way, and to not step on toes and do things like that.
We also have a free self-paced EduFlow Academy course that you can sign up for if you want to learn more about generative AI, and we have a few bits of information about how they work, which is quite interesting. So we'll probably put down the show notes.
The link in the show notes. Everything's in the show notes. Just going to keep on throwing that down there. So awesome. I think we got that one. Are we good?
Yeah. I mean, we could keep going, but
easily.
It'll be like a 10-part podcast.
It really will, because the more and more I keep on diving in and playing around with different things online, the more I'm just like, there's just so much. There's so many capabilities. There's so many things, but trying to scale back here and make sure spending time wisely and not just signing up for every single blasted tool online, because my email is like exploding of being like, hey, your free trial's over. I'm like, no. I'm like, it's fun to try it. Like, I'm all set. Yeah. So anyway, okay, let's move on. Question number 4. And this says, thanks for this opportunity, Luke. I would love to know your recommendations for best steps and resources for someone looking to pivot into the field of #instructional design. I know you have your podcast and have written a book, which I'm hoping to purchase, but what is your recommendations on where to start, tools, and learning theories to become familiar with? Looking forward to hearing what you have to share. So I made a post about this the other day, and William, you took the last question. I'll dive into this one. But I made a post the other day talking about how I am currently working on putting together probably the biggest piece of content I've ever put out there, of just talking about where do you begin? How do you do this? Because by far it is the number one question that I am asked, because I have an instructional design podcast and YouTube channel, that there's always at least once a day or every other day, if someone's just like, there's a lot of stuff out there. How do I start? What do I know works? What is not so great? So I'm actually doing this for you. So for the person who asked this question, you will eventually see a humongous YouTube video from me talking all about every single step along the way. But for now, what I can at least try to be able to answer and talk more about this, and this goes back to my LinkedIn post the other day, is that I'm seeing a lot of people talking about learning the tool first and then doing everything else. And to me, it should be the exact opposite order, because a tool is just a tool. Technology is certainly important for what it is that we do, especially now more than ever, pertaining to online learning and remote working and everything else of a sort. Yes, we use technology. However, trying to be able to say what at the end of the day is the heart and the core of what an instructional designer does, well, it's making learning meaningful and making it engaging and relevant for our people who are taking our products and our experiences. And if it's just thinking about the tool first, to me, that is so backwards. That to me, when I read things like that, is basically saying that you were going to plan a trip, and then rather than actually trying to be able to figure out like what you're going to do into the trip and like the sites you're going to see and whatever, you're like, okay, I'm living in the United States, I'm going to Japan, no matter what, I'm taking a train. Can you get there by train? No, it's not going to work. But you're like, but I have to use this tool because I picked the train, so therefore it must be the train. And it's like, no, it's not. And that's kind of what people do, which I have been seeing and experiencing myself of going through different types of trainings, where it's clear that the tool was selected first, and then they attempted to kind of, square peg, round hole and fit this thing in. And you're like, it doesn't fit. It's not the best tool. You should be able to think more about what the actual goals are, the purpose, and then eventually in the design process thinking, okay, what is the best way to deliver this course, training, program, workshop, whatever it is. So That's a quick rant there about tools. and, and because of that, so where do I think you should actually begin? The first thing that I would be thinking about is just thinking more about how you learn, because there are so many people out there, but this is a humongous challenge that you have honestly maybe not done in quite some time. When was the last time that you fully dedicated yourself into studying about something and being able to practice and apply and monitor your own growth and your progress and evaluate how you are doing? It's probably been a long time since you've had to actually go and invest in something so deeply. So my first steps would actually be thinking more about goal setting, being able to create manageable, small, measurable goals, and not just say, if you want to become an instructional designer, it's the big overarching thing here, but then let's break that down. What does that actually mean? Well, you want to be able to read 2 chapters inside of a book in 14 days. You want to be able to interview 3 instructional designers and ask them how they got to where they are today, and do that and give yourself a deadline of 60 days. You want to revise your cover letter or your resume within 30 days. Trying to be able to make these manageable, measurable goals so that way you know that you are moving forward, you can see your progress and your own growth. That's where you should start. Then you can move on into the next step and the next and the next. And to give you one more thing off of that, and I'm going to sound very redundant as this YouTube video comes out, and this is literally what I'm saying inside of the video, but then the next thing is going to be take out a Google Doc, Microsoft Word, Notion, something like that, and just write down the type of hypothetical question of why should someone hire you? Then write down your strengths, your skills, your abilities, your passions, your experiences, your education, what makes you you, and just put that down on paper. And don't get fancy, don't get cute, don't put in some crazy academic jargon, like none of that. Just write down what makes you you and what do you actually find meaning in your work and where do you find this? Because there is a solid chance that as you were looking at everything and you're like, that's not instructional designer per se. Maybe it's like customer support manager, or maybe it's going into more about something for instructional technologist, or maybe you're dabbling more inside of the learning experience design world, because there's all these other different types of offshoots of job titles that not necessarily align perfectly into instructional design, which is a huge problem we're facing right now as an entire body, because you can see 2 different instructional design job postings and read them and you're like, they're not the same, which is a humongous problem. So if you're limiting your search to just the job title search, that's also going to give you some kind of odd results. So knowing more about where you can also take these different types of passions and areas and transfer them into other areas of instructional design related types of jobs, I think that's going to open up your eyes and say, oh, I see what else is out there. Now I have a better sense about what I really should be studying. And then you can try to be able to think more about the appropriate methods and resources and topics that are going to help you.
Yeah. Well, we can even throw a little, to build on your idea, we can even throw a little ChatGPT trick in there. And I've been using this quite often, or not a similar strategy quite often, where you tell ChatGPT to be a journalist, or to be, let's say, in this case, let's say it's like a journalist, and this journalist wants to interview you based on your experience at the job, and say, okay, prime ChatGPT with this role as a journalist, and then it'll be like a really good reflective tool, because it'll probably ask you questions that you wouldn't have thought of before. So it might then ask you, what did you like the most about the job? And then at the end, you can continue that conversation, and maybe from there you can kind of tease out what you really liked about your job. And I think to kind of build on what you mentioned earlier, or what we mentioned earlier, is that because instructional design is so broad, and because there are so many tools that are very, very specific to very specific niches, you might be investing in learning about a tool that you might never use. So unless you're sure about your trajectory and what exactly you want to do, it might be better to first explore. But if you are sure, then definitely go for it. Invest in learning about the tool. But I definitely agree with Luke about making sure you know how or why you make specific decisions when using the tool before you start investing in it. And obviously it requires practice. You need to iterate and get feedback and stuff. So look for opportunities to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And a tool to me, so instructional design to me is that when you think about it, our jobs pertain to learning, research, project management, relationship management, and then technology. Those to me are the 5 different domains that make up an instructional designer. So a technology, a tool, a software, whatever, that is a singular thing. And then comes the everything else. So I want to make sure I at least still answer some part of this question too, because they asked a lot. So I want to make sure at least I'm giving you more than just this until more of this information comes about. But I would think, first of all, as I said, all these things of how do you actually learn? How do you make sure that you're on track and that you're making progress and growth and all that good stuff? But then think more about if you're talking about different types of topics. So definitely within what it is that I do for a living, I need to know about andragogy. So talking about how adults learn. I need to know about project management and making sure that everything is on time as far as for deliverables and due dates, and making sure that whatever budget is set, I am making sure that I stay within that different type of budget. Collaborating with stakeholders, with subject matter experts, that is going to be huge. It will be an interview question no matter where you go, what you do, because our job really does pertain to people skills, communication, empathy, flexibility, listening, all of those different types of elements. That is definitely going to be huge. Talking more about research as well. We talked heavily about the analysis phase of ADDIE, and definitely that is real. We do research all the time. We also have to know about interpreting data, analyzing data, and then figuring out from those data perspectives and those points about making decisions based around the data. Yes, sometimes we do make decisions based around what one person says and you follow suit and whatever. But for the most part, you are trying to be able to think about what the next steps should be. And usually the data points will give you some answers and feedback about where you should be going. So that has to be into every single form of equation. And then, yes, we can then talk more about the technology world of the stuff and the things. But those are the 5 domains that I would start to think about.
Good idea.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. And I could talk, and once again, I feel like this could be literally a 7-hour podcast episode because indeed, once again, I wrote down, I have at least probably 30 bullet points, different types of things you can go and pursue and look into. So hang tight with me. I am trying to get this together. It's taking me forever to write this episode because I have many thoughts and feelings and emotions about how to actually do this properly, because I see a lot of stuff out there that, while I'm sure it's coming from the best of intentions, I'm like, I wouldn't advise someone to do this, certainly, and so whatever. So I'm trying to be able to craft it my own type of my usual way of talking about things. But at least that is a head start. Anything else you want to add, William, to that?
I'll throw a few more resources out there.
Please.
So we obviously, and I feel like I'm being very hectic with the self-promotion, but
you were very on brand today.
Principles course, yeah. The instructional design principles course will be probably a nice starting point where you'll learn about some of the fundamental stuff and about ADDIE and about connecting. Well, you also have an opportunity to connect with other people and get to know other people who are sharing this journey with you, which is also very motivating for a lot of our participants. We also, another thing that might be useful is to start getting to know the movers and the shakers and the influencers in the space. And to that end, David, who's the CEO of EduFlow, did a whole project where he tried to identify some of the top learning influencers. And there are 100 people with a little bio on EduFlow's blog. We'll probably put that in the show notes as well.
I'm on that list, so yes, it's going in the show notes.
Definitely going in there. The other, one of my other favorite resources is Julie Dirksen has a book called Design for How People Learn. It is probably one of the apart from Luke's book, which is also really great. It is one of the most well written bits of instruction, I guess, that you can find. That the book in itself is an example of exceptional instructional design, but it also gives you a really, really good foundation about the principles and the way people make decisions in the space. I highly recommend that. If you're interested in some more of the influencers or the influential stuff, there's a really good podcast series by Donald Clark and John Holmer called Great Minds on Learning. It's I think they've got 10 plus episodes where they kind of go through the history, and they start with philosophers and how they influence learning. But one episode in particular that's really interesting for me, and it might be really good for people to listen to this one. I think they have one about the instructionalists, where they talk about the people who have influenced the field of instructional design, and that might be a really nice way to just understand the way people think and why they make specific decisions, and why the processes are there that we lean on so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was pointing before, because if you were listening to the podcast, you wouldn't see me pointing, that I do have Julie Dirkson's book behind me. I have a few books. The equivalent as what the Bible would be within our instructional design space is definitely Julie Dirkson's book. It has like 800 reviews on Amazon, so you can definitely find that one there. The other book that I would mention as well, and if you are watching on YouTube, is, if I can attempt to do this, oh, that is super weird, is How Learning Works. By Ambrose et al. Fantastic book, as well as Make It Stick. That's more on the learning science side of the house. So can't recommend either of those enough. And then I know the person who was writing it also mentioned about my book, which appreciate it, because that book really was meant for you. It was meant for people trying to be able to come into this field and talking more about the instructional design journey as far as for the professional development journey. So career guidance, life advice, that's all inside of there for that book. And that's making me sick trying to follow along with my hands on YouTube. So that's the one that I would recommend to also pick up. Self-promotion, self-plug, but it literally was meant to be able to help someone like yourself to be able to navigate those waters. And those, as far as for books and resources, are a great guide. Obviously, there's a ton of podcasts and YouTube and everything. We'll go into that more later on, but at least I think we give you some different types of pieces of advice of what to do for the meantime. William, did we answer that one fully?
I think so. I think we've got some good stuff.
Okay, excellent. We have enough that it actually kicked me out of my browser, so I think we answered that one in as much details as possible. Okay, so then the last but not least is going to be, and this is a fantastic question. I appreciate all the details of this person who wrote in. And this basically says that we are a team of 5. We're educational science and technology students doing our first actual designing assignment. One of us is a SME, is a math teacher. We have researched a problem via interview with another math teacher, formulated a problem statement and learning goal, research literature and theories, and identified design requirements. And then this says the next step would be starting to actually design and construct a prototype, but we are not sure how to start and proceed. And while you're at it, perhaps you also have some recommendations for free applications or so to use for math lessons. William, I took the last one. Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'm probably going to steal your answer here, but
please.
I would say start with the backward design process. I mean, you've done all the work now, and now it's time to find out it's time to articulate the kind of intended learning outcome. So you've got your learning goal. I don't know if that also means you've figured out what your I guess there are different ways of calling them. And there was a very divisive blog post about it recently. But you get learning objectives, instructional objectives, you get instructional design objectives. They're the things that we use to plan our learning experience. Write those things down. And once you know what the outcome is, once you know what you want learners to be able to do, then we can figure out what proof that the learners will need to produce to prove that they have learned what we wanted them to learn. So is that them being able to do a specific equation or whatever, and then we can start preparing our learning journey. Or let's say we can start preparing them to do what they're supposed to be able to do. I think that's quite a nice little process to get started. And then kind of in your analysis, it's probably good to start thinking about your tool, what you're going to use to deliver. In terms of your recommendations for applications to use for maths lessons, I think the gold standard at the moment is probably Khan Academy. I think they're going to absolutely decimate the entire online K through 12 space with their offering. But they have a really cool conversational chatbot that will be able to do maths questions and stuff for you, which is really cool. So maybe look at that as an example, and maybe for some inspiration to learn about how they use their online tools to teach math. which is very, very cool. Other things to think about are Garnier's 9 events. So how can you kind of load up that entire learner journey based on what you've, let's say you've done your backward design process, how are you going to start presenting that material? And then what I always recommend is to build your, there's often this instinct to just build like a really big extensive thing, but I recommend building what I call your minimum viable accessible product. Build like the bare minimum that is accessible, and then iterate based on your testing and your research that you've done. So try to do the bare minimum and then start building on that. I got that idea from, in web design, they have this thing called progressive enhancement, which is a response to another thing called graceful degradation. I don't know if you're aware of that, Luke, from your web design experience, but you get people, progressive enhancement is this philosophy of designing for mobile first, and then expanding to get to the desktop version. Graceful degradation is starting with the desktop version and then going down to mobile. So you kind of like taking features away as you shrink it down. But that's how I like to think of especially like a pilot course. So when we design our courses, we have a pilot course, and then we keep it small and low risk, and we invite people who are willing to give us brutally honest feedback. And then based on that feedback, we can then decide what needs to be remedied and where we don't need to add a lot of extra things. And that also is way more efficient. We don't have to waste time focusing on something that we might have thought would be difficult to understand. And that's also why I think backward design is a really nice process, because it's efficient. If we just take let's say we think that this textbook chapter will answer the question, and we say, go read that textbook chapter, that means they're going to have to dig through a bunch of useless information, waste a lot of time to actually try to answer the question. But if we start with the intended learning outcome or learning objectives or performance objective, that'll help us to focus that journey that we want our learners to go on.
Yeah, when you were like, I'm going to probably steal your answer, you did. Looking at my notes, and I'm like, that's pretty darn close to what I was going to say. Once again, so same thing, like you said, William, backward design. That's what I would do at this point of time with where this person is at inside of their journey. It's prime and ready to literally do backward design of thinking about the learning objectives, then thinking more about what different types of assessments actually make sense to say that whatever they do, it is then going to show you acceptable levels of evidence to say that this person is on track, or they need more support and guidance, more time, whatever it possibly is. And this is also where too you can think about different types of learning strategies that you can want to go and add into the entire learning experience in and of itself. I know that you are going to be, we're talking about math, so this is of course its own little world as far as we're talking about within different types of math classes. But if you did want to be able to think more about with scenario-based learning or case studies or project-based learning, or for narratives or simulations or whatever it is, that is when you can start thinking more about just what's going to make it different compared to any other different type of form of math class. Like what's going to really make it stand out? And then that way, when someone does say that, like, oh, I took this course, it's going to be not just like I completed it, but oh, it was really interesting, and here's why, which is always like what I want to be able to hear about as a designer, of just what did I do well that I can do more of. So after you get to be able to hear more about those things, then you're thinking more about everything else as far as for the learning activities and then the content. So the learning activities to me are more different types of ways of being able to allow students to fail inside of a safe space. So being able to actually practice, which is shocking for some people, of like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, it should be ungraded. I want you to practice before you go out into the real world and make a mistake. So it's this, that needs to be incorporated inside of a learning experience to me. And then of course, thinking about then the content. How are you actually going to deliver this content? Is it going to be something along the lines of a video, a reading, a workshop, a podcast, whatever it is? So you have different types of ways of being able to then think about this. Then you can put that all together. That should then be your experience. And the other thing that I would add to all of this as well too is that I do a technique that's called course mapping, where I like to be able to take all the things I just talked about of what is it really going to look like, and then map out the learning journey step by step. from the very beginning when someone logs into a course for the very first time, all the way until the end when they get their certificate. What does everything look like in the in-between type of stage? And you can just map that out on a Google Sheet, on a whiteboard, sticky notes, Miro, whatever you want to be able to use. It doesn't matter. Whatever tool works for you is fine with me. I use Google because I'm simple, and all my SMEs like the simplicity of how I design stuff. So I'm pretty simple and boring, but you can do a different type of way of being able to do that. But then go ahead.
I can recommend so Mural. I see there's a team of 5, so it might be useful to have a collaborative whiteboard. So try out Mural, get everyone on the same page, literally, even if it's like during a live like Zoom meeting or something where you plan it all out. You can create sticky notes and drag it out. And we worked with Mural to create a template called Collaborative ADDIE. So there's even a little design section in that template that you can use as a starting point for your collaboration.
Cool. There you go. And then the other thing I was going to add, yes, Khan Academy. I think that's going to be like the new stand. What they're doing right now is absolutely insane and amazing. So we'll see where that goes. But I do recall, and I have not gone in recently into specifically the math portion of this. So please do your research. At least it's going to be a guide to look at another different type of tool. But years ago, I was really impressed with what Dreambox was doing. There's a lot of companies out there that are like, we do gamification. And then you're like, yes, but it's the worst game I've ever played in my entire life, so it's not fun. So yeah, it's a game, but like, is it if it's not fun? Which is kind of like a whole debate in and of itself for learning purposes. But Dreambox actually made math games fun. The last time I looked at it, which was once again, this was years ago. I just remembered when William was talking. So please look at it. I hope that everything is still as awesome as it was years ago, but it actually did look like, and it really was when I experienced it previously, like actual fun ways to learn about math. So that's another tool that potentially you could use for your toolkit. But I think that anything else to add, William, before I say I think that's it for...
No, I think that's it, yeah.
The questions. My goodness. All right, we got through 5 of them. We have like another 10 more, so we'll figure out part 2.
Thank goodness we've got a mystery guest who's going to
mystery surprise guest once again. Tag us. Who do you think is going to be on the show? Oh, mystery. But no. So William, once again, I just want to thank you for being with me. Also dealing with my tech issue as my browser collapsed for no reason, which is super fun and a great time when you're hosting an interview. It's always a great time to be able to do that one. But this is fun. I love doing this. I love seeing too in real time like what you folks are actually facing as far as you're trying to be able to figure things out, and this is a good mix of questions from actually how do you design to then thinking more about career to resources to everything else. It was a good batch. And then the next series of questions are also insanely different but interesting. So can't give away too much. I'm going to leave that for a surprise and suspense. William, please feel free to tell folks where they can find you, what you're up to nowadays. Please feel free to just to share away.
Yeah, well, I think we've been doing quite a lot recently that I can share. So EduFlow Academy has been firing all cylinders, I guess. And we have a course about microlearning that we are busy working on. We have a course about custom education, which I think this is the first time I'm saying this out loud in public. So that's going to be really cool. We have a course about gamification. All 3 that I'm mentioning are going to be cohort-based courses. So we're going to be doing them as a group together. We're going to learn all of these cool stuff in a cohort, which is going to be amazing. The gamification one is being facilitated by Mo Ash, who is incredible, and I'm really, really excited to be sharing that space. And the 2 of us have had so much fun developing the learning journey. You can also check out some of the other things we've been doing. So our Instructional Design Principles course is probably the bread and butter of the academy. And then one of my favorite courses that I've worked on is the Designing Social Learning Experiences course, which is very close to who we are as EduFlow, which is a learning management system, but we are very focused on facilitating quality feedback and social learning experiences.
And of course, people can follow you on LinkedIn.
Yes, yeah. You can just search William Cronje, Cronje on LinkedIn, and I'm the one who's in black and white, and I think that's my profile picture right now.
Absolutely. And Dr. Mo Ash is absolutely the man, by the way.
Yeah.
I love that guy.
He's
awesome.
Incredible.
Yeah, no, fantastic, amazing human being. So can't wait to check out that one. I actually really want to take that one to see more because he is extremely knowledgeable on gamification in the way that you would hope, and not in like as I was talking about before, but some things are like, it's gamified, and then you're like,
yes,
no, it's not.
Exactly. We reserve like a few minutes before we actually start doing our meeting to just rant about what we don't like about how people do gamification. The other thing I realized that I forgot to mention is Bella Gaitan. We just she's developed this absolutely mind-blowingly good cohort-based course about developing a quality assurance rubric specifically for focusing on inclusion and accessibility. So if you work in an organization and you, let's say, have a QA process or don't have a QA process, this course will help you to focus specifically on accessibility and inclusion and how you can create standards that are let's say, specific for your context. Bella is doing a phenomenal job, and it's been really cool to see how she's built this course and how she's facilitating it. I'm really looking forward to other people discovering this and sharing the journey with her.
Awesome. That's another one to sign up for. So quite a bit now is on. It was within EduFlow. So you'll once again go in the show notes and you'll find all of the stuff and the things to be able to go and to check out all those different types of opportunities. But William, once again, thank you so much for being here for the hour and a half-ish I just had you for. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Luke. It's been such a pleasure.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode. And once again, William, thank you so much for being on this show with me, because I also had technical difficulties during that show and we recorded for a long time. So hats off to William, because he's also in a much different time zone compared to me. So I really appreciate all of his time. And then for the next Q&A episode that is going to be coming about, as William mentioned, we are going to be bringing on a special guest. Tag us on LinkedIn. Who do you think is going to be joining the next Q&A episode? Also, if you like the next format with multiple people coming in and having more of a group conversation, I found out from my podcast platform, I use Riverside, I found out that I can actually bring in 7 people at once, which obviously it's going to be quite a bit of a journey to guide that conversation and to make it so that way it is not going to be sounding kind of awful between the audio version, between trying to use YouTube, between lag, and so 7, kind of a little bit too much, but 3 or 4, that could be interesting. I'd love to be able to invite some more friends to come on the show, answer some of your questions, or perhaps talk about things for different types of topics that you just want to be able to hear more about. So stay tuned. Let me know what you think about that idea. Always open to more feedback throughout this show. Once again, though, appreciate you for nerding out with us and for being here. And of course, once again, apply for Instructional Design Institute. Enrollment is going to be closing soon. May 1st is when the next run does kick off. So be sure, get your application in today. And of course, you can always email me if you have any other questions. But hey, folks, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here with us. And of course, stay nerdy out there. Talk to you next time.